I'd like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we meet, the Wurundjeri land, the Kulin Nation. I'd like to acknowledge the Wheeler Centre for this opportunity. They had their chance to say no, but they still brought me down, so that's fantastic to be back in Melbourne again. And I just wanted to acknowledge that part of what I'm going to be talking about and reflecting on, sharing with you, has come from my work in leadership programs with organisations like Social Leadership Australia and Desert Knowledge Australia. I'd like for you to imagine the Year 10 social in a small country town in 1987. The school hall is decorated to turn into a disco. The lights are low and the teachers are trying to look useful. Most of the boys are magnetised to one wall, and most of the girls congregating close to the other wall. Small groups of girls will dance with each other, and even smaller groups of boys attempt to do the same. But there in the middle of that dance floor, there are those who have braved to do what seemed impossible. They have managed to engage the other side. There's the usual suspects of couples. Yeah, we see them together all the time. But then there are those who boldly stepped out to embrace the awkward negotiations and find a way to dance with the other. So my time in the middle of that dance floor prepared me for this kind of work. We are the ones at this disco. We're the ones who are gathered close to our own kind, and we dance and move within the accepted boundaries that our own kind say, this is right, this is good, stay close to us. Some of us try to cross the floor and engage with the other. Some of us go into the middle of the floor and say, is anyone going to join me? And others are just happy to sit and watch as others make attempt after attempt to engage the other side. Today we're going to play with this concept of dancing, and yes, there may even be some demonstrations. But this is about how we seek to cross and engage with the other. What is so stifling and problematic about that task of engaging with the other? We're going to have some fun looking at 3 types of dances that hold keys to improving our understanding and appreciation of ourselves and the others on the other side of that disco. Because in the world of cross-cultural and intercultural leadership, we are required to dance with each other and to find ways to lead together. So I want to talk about 3 types of dances that we need to practice that will help us to meet the other and engage with the other. The first is the dance of language. The second is the dance of power. And the third is the dance of ancient memory. So let's get to dancing. The dance of language in the cross-cultural, intercultural space is a sensitive minefield. At any moment you could say the wrong thing in the wrong way, use the wrong term, approach the wrong person, and you can find yourself undoing all the work you felt you'd made progress, and you can find yourself back behind the 8 ball, as it were. We can sometimes feel quite paralysed, frozen by making these sorts of mistakes. And yes, we can also build impossible pathways with impenetrable obstacles, with our sometimes unknowing, but sometimes very deliberate language barriers. But the dance of language should focus on purpose, not on the exact terminology. We need to accept that we will always be using inadequate language to negotiate impossible language terrain. We're always going to get it wrong. We're always going to find a way that someone is not going to like the way we've said it and the which way and the what we've used. It's always going to happen. And we will always feel that awkward and painful moment when we realise we've stepped into it. But that's okay. We have to allow ourselves to feel that that's okay. It's okay to freeze for a moment. But when you freeze, don't leave the dance floor. Don't stop dancing. Don't use that frozen moment to become your entire recollection of that whole night of dancing. Find a way to move beyond that. Equally, the partner in this dance of language needs to find a way to move beyond that frozen moment with their listening. It's that instant where we feel that paralysing jolt and we go, oh, you've just said something there that's really pushed my buttons. It's really set it off for me. What am I going to do with that? We need to be prepared to suspend our judgment long enough so that we can listen to the purpose and intent of the conversation and not allow that frozen moment to be the way that we recall that conversation. So if we're going to see this as a dance, then remember 1987, right? So the dance that we need to practice here is the hip-hop style of locking. This dance involves robotic, free-flowing movements that deliberately accentuate a locking or freezing. Now, we've all seen this at a wedding or something where someone does the robot. You see that? Is there a demonstration? So that whole part of freezing, but then you've got to keep moving and you have to keep going. And that's the whole point of locking, is that when you find yourself in that moment of frozenness, it's not the end of the dance. That's not your cue to give up. That's not your cue to say, oh, I can't do this work. That's your cue to allow that to work and work it into your move and say, I'm going to keep moving and I'm just going to keep going even though part of me is frozen. This is what you can do when you practice the dance of language as the art hip-hop style of locking. But the dance of language is not about carrying around a list of trigger words to use or not to use given your context. It's about listening for purpose and practicing different types of conversation. I'd like to offer 3 types of language in this space that carry 3 different kinds of purpose. Language of limitation, language of liberation, and language of love. In the language of limitation, you hear phrases like, you can't do this, you're not allowed. That's wrong, that won't work. You know, this stifles our opportunity and capability. This language keeps us stuck, and it's a nasty, dangerous, negative language. So that's not the language we want to practice on. But you will hear this. You can't, you won't, you shouldn't. The language we need to pay more attention to and try to build our muscles on is the language of liberation, which focuses on, and you hear phrases like, you are free, you're granted access, you're allowed to engage, you're allowed to participate, you're open to explore. This kind of language liberates our opportunity and generates capability. But the language of love is not often talked about in leadership terms. But if you think about it, in the language of love, you hear phrases like, you mean something to me. I am moved by you. I appreciate, honour and adore you. I cherish you. This kind of language cuts to the bone in the sweetest way possible. It focuses on forgiveness and kindness. It draws attention to passion of the soul. And it demonstrates that we have the capability to have courage and have strength to love beyond accepted boundaries. By practicing and listening for purpose and moving through those frozen moments, we can navigate better language. We can navigate our way through that minefield. This also means we do less of limitation, but we actually give more strength. We practice those moves of liberation and love. The second dance is a dance of power. In this dance, we find that we've got to have a better understanding about our power and its relationship to the others on the other side. That means we have to become acutely aware of the fact that we occupy certain amounts of power, and that our power is in relationship to the other. If we fail to fully recognise that, we can infuriate others who see that we've got power, we can offend others by overusing our power, and we can abuse people by using our power incorrectly. But we have to use our power. We can sometimes feel afraid of that because we've seen it used poorly before. But we have to utilise the power that we are given to be able to engage with the others on the other side. We have to share our power. And sharing power in leadership terms is not an easy thing. We feel a sense of loss when we give up power. We feel like we've given something, and there is a fear built in that the power that we've given, others will use against us. But we will not make progress in engaging the others if we hold on to our power, are unaware of what power that we've got, and we're just using it in whatever direction. So there is a dance that illustrates this. Remember, 1987. And that's the dance of the hip-hop crew. You know those battle dances where they say, come on, our crew's going to take on your crew. When you get that ensemble of dancers together, they actually have to negotiate power. This is the dance where you have to alternate between a whole group choreography. There's a small group with specialised steps. And then, of course, there is my favourite, which is the individual showtime, where you get to show your moves and everyone goes, wow, that's the best dancer. But in fact, I might be the best at that move, whereas Helen might be the best at another move, or, that's the way it works. A good dance crew will work with the dynamic knowing that each person has got a speciality, each person has got a power, each person has got a particular move that they are really strong at, and they're weak at another thing. They'll manage this dynamic and know that they have to share the stage. It teaches us a lot about power, the importance of knowing yours, the significance of knowing others and their power, and the need to share it. So I didn't have time to cue up the music, but if I did, this would be the point where I would have danced. But, we just didn't have time this morning. Maybe that's for the next time I come. The final dance I want to talk about is the dance of ancient memory. This has the potential to be the hardest one to engage with because it is about wisdom and appreciation and evolution. It's a dance that by practicing it, you connect and engage with your own ancient past to enhance your own wisdom in the current moment. It allows you to participate with the other, not on a short memory or a shallow memory, but saying, I'm participating with you because I recognise that you're ancient like I'm ancient, and we come from a long, long memory of people. In Australia, this is a difficult thing for us to navigate together because we look at the Aboriginal people and we say, oh, you mobbed 60,000 years. How long you been? Oh, 3 generations, 2 generations. Oh, I'm from Melbourne. We don't allow ourselves the recognition of all being ancient peoples. But by practicing the dance of ancient memory, it enhances our wisdom. Sometimes in leadership, we can be driven by a short-term success fetish. We get caught up in the frantic efforts to produce quick results. But they're often on challenges that are really complex and difficult to get a handle on, and their origins are quite distant from where we're working. How can we get quick results on that sort of stuff? The dance of ancient memory enables us to draw from a much more deep set of data. We're not dealing with something that we say, oh yeah, I think I know about that from what I saw last week. It enables us to draw on a much deeper, longer memory to engage with the stuff. We draw further back in time and space to try and understand the leadership complexity that's in front of us. Now, we see this when we engage with people in our organisations who've been there for decades. They'll say, oh, I know how to deal with this. Yeah, we just take that there and we do this and we do a couple of those and that should be fine. I go, wow, that's really wise of you, because you've been around long enough to know how the systems work. You've got corporate memory. You've got memory about how to do this work that you've built over time. But imagine holding centuries of memory of human interaction, centuries of a story that has bubbled over centuries of your people. Or imagine holding thousands of years of memory, corporate memory, about the way humans and the environment might interact. Part of what we need to do with engagement on ancient memory is to recognise that some people can remember that much better than others can. And part of our challenge in crossing the floor and working in this cross-cultural leadership is about our ability to recognise that in each other and recognise that in ourselves. By exploring ancient memory, we can uncover some differences and similarities, recognising that the Western framework has a fundamentally different cosmogony, a different way of seeing the world, to an Indigenous way of seeing the world. If we are okay and comfortable with that, because we recognise that we are all ancient people, then we could say, my ancestors had a different way of constructing the relationship of them and the world to your ancestors. There's no shame, there's no dishonour in that. It's just a different way. Much like the different people on the sides of that disco, we're just different. But also by uncovering our ancient memory, we can uncover some unlikely similarities. I just want to draw your attention to one of those similarities that we don't fully appreciate. You and I are from people who worship the sun and the moon. Aboriginal people can tell you a dreaming story about the sun and the moon. You mob have got dreaming stories all around the place about sun and the moon. And today is Thor's Day, that your ancestors named after Thor. And those ancestors renamed it because the ancestors before them named it after Jupiter, because they tracked the way that the moon moved. So you've got an ancient memory with this, but you just don't access it and pull it up. You just say, oh yeah, it's Thursday, I think, because it's the day after hump day, or it's payday, or something like that. But there's an ancient memory to this. So ancient memory allows us to see that we have similarities. And so when I ask you, how come it's Thursday, the 12th of June, 2014, why isn't it a different sort of day? You'll go, oh, I'm not sure. But if you could access your ancient memory, you'd say, well, it's because this guy, Pope Gregory, in 1582, made these changes. That's why we're on the Gregorian calendar, which is like the global secular calendar. But our British ancestors didn't adopt it until 1752, just before we came here. And then if you do that to me, then I go, oh, you mob like me. You mob follow the sun and the moon just like our mob do. Yeah, but you've just forgotten your dreaming story as it's come through. Ancient memory allows us to carry the longer memory with us. By dancing the ancient memory, it allows us to also carry the evolution of ideas into our current context. This evolution of ideas allows us to see, like the calendar, that things have evolved over time. Ideas evolved over time, and then they got codified, and then they got set. Now, why would this be useful for us to carry this? It's useful because it allows us to do two very important concepts. One is to realise that all ideas have evolved and theoretically are still evolving. And second of all, that the codification of those ideas, the setting of those ideas, was done by a particular people in particular time. Therefore, what is stopping you and I from resetting, recodifying those ideas? For example, you and I are in the evolution of ideas on how Indigenous and other Australians work together. It's not like it was in our parents' day or our grandparents' day or in the early 1900s or 1800s or whenever. It's not like that anymore. We have evolved from that way of thinking to where we are now. And my hope is that through opportunities like this, we continue to evolve that thinking so that we can uncover new relationships and new ways of engaging with the others, whoever they are. But these ideas are not locked in time from any era before us. And when you and I come against strongly held ideas, deep convictions that people have even built institutions around and say, this is how it is, we can start to ask questions like, how long has it been like that? Is that a 10-year convention? Is that like a 2-generation sort of tradition? Is there an opportunity that we can evolve this rather than say it's locked, forget it, it won't move? Take our debate or lack of debate around how we're talking about marriage equality. Is there a way we can continue to evolve this idea and to reshape this institution? Of course there is. And how are you and I in this day and in this time evolving our ideas about things that we thought were set in stone about the way that Indigenous and other Australians relate? We have the opportunity to remake those standards, to remake those practices. And the dance of ancient memory is a traditional dance. It's about an opportunity to bring shake a leg into Gangnam style. I've seen it done. It's been done at my house very recently. We have glow stick dance parties at my house for the kids and everything like that. And when Gangnam style comes on, all the nephews and nieces, ranging from 6 through to 20, 25 or so, they sing, instead of Wop Wop Gangnam style, they sing Wop Wop Sherberg style, which is where my mum is from. And then they start shaking leg, They are doing this ancient practice that everyone goes, that's an Aboriginal dance, to a Korean pop song. How did you do that? Couldn't have been done 100 years ago, but it can be done now. There is important work to be done in the cross-cultural and intercultural leadership space. The work is about getting on the dance floor and engaging with each other. Not being afraid of the frozen moments, but allow them to free flow into that dance. Say, yeah, I'm frozen for a bit, but that's my move, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to keep dancing until we can become unfrozen and we can keep working together. We can grow in awareness of our own power and the way that we use that power to help make progress and not shy away from it. We have power to use to shape and remake what's going on right now. And finally, we can also draw on our ancient memory by learning our traditional dance, because it enhances our sense of wisdom in leadership and our sense of belonging to ancient peoples. But we won't do any of this work if we remain magnetised to the walls. And the only way we're going to take up our power and engage in the dance of leading together is by acting on the influence of Michael Jackson. Remember, 1987. And that influence of Michael Jackson said, get off the wall and get on the floor. Thank you.